This is Sky World News Review and Business Report with Lisa Knights.
This is Sky World News. A reminder of our top stories this morning. Political and religious leaders around the world have condemned a Christian evangelist church in Florida that plans to burn copies of the Quran on the anniversary of 9/11. At least 20 people have been killed by a car bomb in northwest Pakistan. The Taliban has been blamed. And the UN now says that there were double the number of rapes in eastern Congo since July and admits it didn't do enough to protect villagers. Time for an update on all the African business news. Cross to Summit TV.
Hello and a very good morning. I'm Jennifer Sue from Summit TV, and here's a look at how the bourses were last trading across the African continent. In southern Africa, Botswana's domestic index was flat. South Africa's all-share lost more than 1%, but the LUSE in Zambia was up 2/3%. Over to West Africa, where Ghana's all-share closed 0.85% firmer. Ivory Coast shed just more than 0.5%, and Nigeria's all-share was down 0.9%. And in East Africa, Kenya's NSE was more weaker. The Mauritian Semdex was down 0.45%, and Uganda's composite closed 0.63% weaker on the day. Let's take a look at the currencies markets this morning. In southern Africa, $1 buys you 6.65 Botswana Pula, 7.24 South African Rands, and 4,773 Zambian Kwacha. In West Africa, you pay 1.41 Ghanaian cedi a dollar, just under 500 Ivory Coast francs, and over 148 Nigerian naira for the greenback. And finally, in East Africa, you'll get 77.43 Kenyan shillings for dollar, 29.63 Mauritian rupees, and 2,211 Ugandan shillings for $1. Hello and a very good morning to you. I'm Jennifer Sue with a look at what's making business news on the African continent. We begin in Zimbabwe, where there's been a big setback for London-listed African Consolidated Resources. The country's High Court has cancelled ACR's license to mine in the lucrative Mirage diamond field. Harare confiscated the license back in 2006 and handed over management of the fields to two little-known South African firms. Recently, though, the High Court ruled that the rights belong to ACR. Now it's reversed that decision. It's ruled the original license was wrongfully issued. ACR plans to appeal. Mirage is one of the biggest diamond finds of recent years. It was recently the center of a blood diamond controversy, and regulators have only recently lifted a ban on sales. Over to South Africa, where the country's ANC Youth League president insists that nationalization is on the cards for the nation's miners. Julius Malema says the ruling ANC has failed to transform SA's economy from the days of apartheid, and mining firms haven't done enough to alleviate poverty. Now the Youth League wants the ANC to establish a state-owned mining company, which would hold all the country's mineral rights. Under its plan, established firms would be forced to cede 60% of their operations to the state and pay more in taxes. Malema is not worried that such a move would drive investors away. On the contrary, he believes it would attract international players. The ANC has repeatedly maintained that nationalization is not government policy, although it says it's open to debate. South Africa is also counting the cost of recent industrial action. The country's treasury says government department budgets must be cut, and its top business lobby has warned the industrial action will crimp growth. More than 1 million workers have come out in recent weeks. Among the areas affected, the public sector, the motor industry, and a string of mines. Workers are demanding pay rises of at least double the rate of inflation, and most employers are bowing to that. The government says it'll need to cut elsewhere to meet demands by public service workers. The SA Chamber of Commerce and Industry says the strikes will further damage job creation. Now let's take a quick look at other news from across the continent. Well, South African power parastatal Eskom is planning to sell bonds in Europe and the U.S. later this year. That's to help fund its expansion program. Eskom needs to raise around $6.9 billion in the next 3 years. Egypt is to spend around $10.5 billion upgrading irrigation on 2.1 million hectares of farmland. And London-listed Gem Diamond says it's found a 196-carat rough white diamond at its Letseng mine in Lesotho. And that's your African Business Roundup from Johannesburg. I'm Jennifer Sue. Now back to you at the Sky News Centre in London.
Jennifer Sue, thanks very much for that. Let's have a quick look at the currencies and the markets. Stocks fell in very light volume on Tuesday. The Dow dropped 107 points. Investors seized on renewed concerns about European banks as a reason to sell shares after strong gains last week. Banks, energy companies and computer chip makers were the biggest losers. Thanks very much for that. Well, this is Sky World News. Do remember to check out our website too at skynews.com. Expensive election. Our US correspondent blogs on why the midterms could hit American taxpayers' wallets. Plus, coming up, how Julia Gillard won the day by just one seat in the Australian election. And in sport, find out who came out on top in the glamorous matchup between Argentina and Spain.
Sports headlines. Two-time former US Open tennis champion Venus Williams is through to the semi-finals. She beat French Open champion Francesca Schiavone 7-6, 6-4. Williams will play defending champion Kim Clijsters for a place in the final. Second seed Clijsters beat fifth seed Samantha Stosur 6-4, 5-7, 6-3. England manager Fabio Capello said Wayne Rooney was a happy figure in the dressing room after putting his personal troubles aside for a few hours. He scored England's first as they comfortably beat Switzerland 3-1 in Basel. And in a glamorous friendly, Argentina beat world champion Spain 4-1 in Buenos Aires. Lionel Messi with the home sides first.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Now, British indie trio The XX have landed the Mercury Prize for their debut album XX. The South London band took the gong ahead of 11 other shortlisted acts at a ceremony in London last night. The group, who are all childhood friends, attended the same school and beat off strong competition from veteran Paul Weller and past winner Dizzy Rascal. Amy Hitchcock's report does contain flash photography.
I'm delighted to announce that the winner of the Barclaycard Mercury Prize 2010 is the XX for their album, The XX.
The Mercury Prize is one of the most highly respected awards in music. So when the relatively unknown band, the XX, won last night with their debut album, they were quite surprised.
We haven't had a moment to take it in, so we're a lot of shock. Yeah.
You still live at home, don't you? Are you going to move out now you're big stars?
Yeah, I think, I hope so. We've been touring for like 2 years now, so we haven't had the opportunity to kind of move out of home and grow up properly.
The South London trio wrote most of this album in their bedrooms in the middle of the night. They were up against some heavyweights. The bookies' favourite was Paul Weller, and former Mercury winner Dizzy Rascal was nominated, so they never expected to actually win. If you've not heard of the XX, well, you're not alone, but you'll hear lots more of them in the coming weeks. Winning a Mercury can help launch a career in music, and it'll certainly help their record sales. But right now, these guys are just enjoying the attention while it lasts. It's not unusual for an outsider to win this because its judges quite simply decide what they think is the best album of the year from the UK and Ireland. That's why it's the one everyone wants to win.
America's important. You don't really just focus on the artist and don't focus on nothing else. It's not a popularity contest. It's judged on the music.
So once again, the Mercury Prize has given its vote to a new talent, but only time will tell if they truly have the XX factor.
Thank you so much.
Amy Hitchcock, Sky News.
A protesting opponent to proposed changes to retirement in France makes the front page of the International Herald Tribune. French Daily Le Monde shows how the strikes affected passengers in the Paris metro. Spain's El País has news of the country's defeat at the hands of Argentina in a friendly match yesterday, as squad members were honoured with a royal award for their World Cup victory. Germany's Frankfurt Allgemeine shows Kim Jong-il at a party meeting, the first major gathering of the North Korean communists in 44 years. When Engels flew is the headline in the Berliner Zeitung, showing the statue of the philosopher being removed from its place in Berlin for construction work. The Financial Times highlights the outrage that's greeted the appointment of Bob Diamond to lead Barclays Bank in the UK. And Denmark's Jyllands-Posten shows Thomas Kallenberg as he scored the winning goal in the country's Euro 2012 qualifier against Iceland last night. Southern Namibia and the Western Cape will have some fairly persistent rain, while to the east, Mozambique, eastern Zimbabwe and Swaziland will be cloudy with some patchy outbreaks possible. To the east, Madagascar will be fine, but the Seychelles will have a few showers. In the north, meanwhile, the equatorial showers will develop widely from Senegal southeast to northern Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo and across to western Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea and Sudan. But Somalia will be dry. You are watching Sky World News. Do remember to check out our website too, skynews.com, and what happened to the British police officer caught on CCTV assaulting a prisoner. Coming up, we hear more from the Florida church, which plans to burn the Quran in a protest against the Muslim faith. Plus, what will we learn about the Gulf oil spill when BP releases its report later today? This is Sky World News. Let's take another look at some of our top stories.